Okay, let's get into this. We're looking at a story out of Baja, California, Mexico today. It starts out, like a dream trip for three young guys.
Right, a surfing holiday.
Exactly. But it took a really tragic turn, ended up as a nightmare, really, and it got huge international attention.
Yeah, it really did. And it puts a spotlight on this region that's, well, beautiful, but also has some serious underlying issues.
So what we're doing here is kind of unpacking the information we have from one specific source.
That's right. It's based on a YouTube video transcript called The Baja Murders. And our goal is really just to lay out what that source tells us.
Understand the timeline, who the people involved were.
The setting, Baja itself, and maybe what this whole thing suggests about the bigger picture there.
It's such a stark contrast, isn't it? That stunning coastline, the tourist appeal, versus this darker potential.
Definitely. So maybe we should start with Baja, California itself. Set the scene a bit.
Good idea. What does the source tell us about the place?
Okay, so picture this. It's Mexico's northernmost state, and the westernmost one, too.
Right on the Pacific.
Yeah, massive long coastline. You've got the Pacific Ocean on one side, Gulf of California on the other. Visually, it's, pretty incredible.
And it's not just scenery, is it? It's important economically.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Big fishing industry, busy ports. It's a key area for Mexico's economy.
Plus, tourism. Huge draw.
Massive. That's what many people know it for. Beautiful beaches, cities, nightlife, shopping, the whole vacation package. Favorite spot for lots of visitors.
But like we said, there's another side to it. The source calls it a dark side.
Right, and it's important context. The area does struggle with high crime rates.
Why is that, according to the source?
Well, part of it is geography, being a northern border state, lots of movement, including tourism, which can attract crime, but there's also a significant presence of criminal gangs.
And these aren't small-time operations.
No, not at all. The source mentions that they control these, dark economies. Weapons, drugs, human trafficking, prostitution, serious stuff.
And that leads to violence.
Yeah, unfortunately. Clashes between rival gangs happen, and that creates risk. Tourists have reported robberies, petty crime too. It's serious enough that some governments have issued travel warnings for Baja.
That definitely adds a layer of risk you need to be aware of, even in such a beautiful place. Okay, so against that backdrop, let's talk about the three young men at the center of this.
Yeah, let's. First, there's Callum Robinson. He was 33, Australian.
And quite distinctive, right? Tall guy.
Yeah, really tall. 6'4", big build, around 250 pounds. Apparently got nicknamed Big Koala or Australian Tour.
He was an athlete too, wasn't he? Lacrosse?
That's right. Lacrosse described as kind of like ice hockey mixed with football. It's actually an ancient Native American sport recently back in the Olympics.
Interesting. What was he like personally?
Seems he was really intense when playing, but off the field, super caring, funny, thoughtful, maybe even overthought things sometimes because he cared so much about people's feelings,
Sounds like a good guy. And loved surfing.
Loved surfing, yeah. And seemed driven to find new experiences, push himself a bit.
He spent time in the U.S. too.
He did. Got his bachelor's in Perth, then a master's at Stevenson University in Maryland. That's where he got serious about lacrosse. Joined the Stevenson Mustangs team.
Okay. And then there's his younger brother, Jake Robinson.
Jake, yeah. 30 years old, also Australian.
He was a doctor.
Yep, a doctor back home in Australia. Worked for the South Metropolitan Health Service. Studied at University of Notre Dame.
And his personality?
Described as really gentle, empathetic, loved to travel. Apparently, being a doctor was his childhood dream, and he actually achieved it. Yeah. Well-regarded, skilled, kind.
And like his brother.
He loved surfing, too. Seems like that was a big connection for them.
And the third friend, Carter Road.
Carter Road, yeah. 30 years old, American. Born in Atlanta, but grew up mostly in San Diego.
Studied business. Played some sports.
Right. Florida Southern College, then Point Loma Nazarene University back in San Diego. Played college football there.
Didn't he play professional soccer for a bit too?
He did, yeah. Down in Guatemala for a team called Deportivo Mixco. That was like 2014, 2015.
Wow. Then came back to the U.S.?
Came back around 2019, worked in tech, but stayed involved with soccer, coaching youth teams locally. And again, that shared love of surfing, that's what connected him with Callum and Jake. They became really close friends through it.
It's just heartbreaking when you think about what they had ahead of them.
Totally. Callum thinking about starting a family back in Australia. Jake apparently up for a big promotion.
And Carter had just gotten engaged, right? To his fiancée, Natalie.
Yeah.
Planning their life together.
Yeah. 3 promising lives just gone. tied together by friendship and the ocean, which makes what happened next so awful.
So this trip, it was for Callum's 33rd birthday, April 2024.
And they picked Baja specifically for the surfing, one of those beautiful beaches.
And when they got there, they met someone.
Yeah, this local guy, Randy, photographer, also a surfer. Sounds like they hit it off, surfed together, had some beers back at their place, friendly encounter.
And they asked him for advice.
They did. They wanted that, perfect spot. Less crowded, private, beautiful, an unseen beach was the term used.
And Randy suggested La Bocana.
Yeah, La Bocana Beach, down near Santo Tomas, south of Ensenada. He described it as, secluded, pristine, good for camping.
Did he mention safety?
Well, the source says he told them he'd been there, over 50 times with no problem. So it sounds like he might have downplayed any potential risks because it was so remote. He even offered to go with them.
But he didn't end up going.
No, apparently had other commitments. But wished them well, told them they'd have a great experience.
So April 26, 2024. Callum, Jake, and Carter rent a truck, load up their gear,
And head off to La Bocana Beach.
and at first it seemed like Randy was right. They were having a good time.
Yeah, they posted stuff online, didn't they? Photos, little videos on the 26th and 27th. Camping, surfing, looked like they were loving it.
So friends and family saw those updates, probably thought everything was great.
Exactly, just enjoying the trip.
Yeah.
But then, silence.
After April 27th, nothing.
The posts stopped. Families couldn't get through on the phone, messages weren't answered.
And the big alarm bell, the source notes, was the Airbnb booking.
Right. They were supposed to check into an Airbnb in Rosarito on May 3rd, and they just didn't show up.
That must have been terrifying for the families,
Yeah.
especially with Callum's diabetes needing management.
Absolutely. Worry turning into real panic. That silence was just, yeah,
So the families had to act.
they did. May 1st, Callum and Jake's mother posted on Facebook a public plea for help, asking if anyone had seen them.
And that post took off.
Oh yeah, went viral almost immediately, shared everywhere, picked up by the media. Because they were Australian and American, it instantly became this big international story.
Which put pressure on the authorities, presumably.
Definitely. Mexican police got involved, started investigating the disappearance, and they focused their search, naturally, on La Bocana Beach, their last known spot.
What did they find there?
Well, they found the campsite, tourist gear, sleeping bags, that kind of thing, but also
Oh, yeah.
blood stains on one of the tents and drag marks in the sand.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that's immediately very bad.
Very bad. So they widened the search area nearby, and then they found more. A burned tent matching the one the guys were using,
And the truck.
and a burned white pickup truck. Later confirmed, yeah, it was their rental.
And the source mentioned something specific about the truck.
The wheels. All 4 wheels were missing, which, immediately suggests theft as a possible motive, right?
Right. And then there was the well.
Yeah, nearby they found this water well, about 10 meters deep, so pretty deep. Source says they weren't sure about searching it at first, but decided to check, maybe for discarded evidence.
And that's where.
Tragically, yes, inside the well they found 3 bottles.
Confirmed later by autopsy to be Callum, Jake, and Carter.
That's right. And the autopsies showed the cause of death.
Single gunshot wound to the head for each of them.
Yeah. Confirmed murder. Horrifying.
The source also mentioned another body in that whale.
It did, yeah.
Yeah.
Another body, much more decomposed. Investigators apparently thought it was unconnected to this specific case, but its presence there. It suggests that well might have been used by criminals before to dump bodies. Hints at, ongoing issues in the area.
So with the discovery, the international pressure must have intensified even more.
Hugely. You have victims from Australia, the US, found murdered in a tourist area. It was a massive story globally. And the Mexican police, they acted fast.
How did they get their first break?
A key lead was Carter Rhodes' cell phone. It was missing, but police managed to track it. They found it had been turned on briefly after the bodies were found in a rural village.
And they traced it.
Traced the signal, yeah. Led them to a woman named R.E.G., and the source says when police confronted her, she apparently dropped a bag of drugs.
So she was arrested?
Arrested for drug possession and for having Carter's phone.
Did she talk?
According to the police statements reported in the source, yes. Under questioning, she allegedly implicated 2 men, Jesus Gerardo, known as El Kikas, and his brother, Christian Arecki.
And Christian Arecki was her boyfriend.
That's what the source indicates, yeah.
What about Jesus Gerardo? El Cacas? Any background?
The source mentions he reportedly had a pretty extensive criminal history, drug dealing, domestic violence, and significantly, vehicle theft.
The missing wheels. That detail probably jumped out at the police.
You'd have to assume so, yeah, given the state of the truck.
So what was the alleged motive, according to REG's reported statement and the police theory?
Basically, the story that emerged publicly was that Jesus Gerardo saw the truck, specifically the wheels, and decided he wanted to steal them.
And the Robinsons and Carter intervened.
Exactly. They confronted him, tried to protect their property, and according to this hypothesis, Jesus Gerardo responded by shooting them, killing all three.
And then involved the others.
Allegedly, yeah. Called his brother Christian and REG to help dispose of the bodies in the well, burn the tent, burn the truck, try to cover it all up.
But it's crucial to note, the source points out,
that Jesus Gerardo and Christian Araichi reportedly did not confess. That's important.
right. And this information, this theory, came out before any court hearing, didn't it?
Yeah, the source was put together before the initial hearing scheduled for November 2024, so the full evidence picture likely wasn't public yet, to avoid prejudicing the case.
So let's just quickly recap the police hypothesis as presented publicly based on that source material.
Okay, so the idea is perpetrator, likely Jesus Gerardo, are driving by, maybe scouting,
They see the campsite at La Bocana, spot the truck.
zero in on the wheels and tires, probably because they're valuable, relatively easy to take.
One of the guys, Callum, Jake, or Carter, sees what's happening. They confront the thief or thieves.
And instead of backing off, the confrontation turns violent. Deadly violent. The suspect shoots all three men in the head.
Then panic, maybe? Or a cold calculation, the killer calls for backup.
Potentially, Christian Araichi and REG, according to the theory, they help move the bodies to the well.
Burn the evidence tent, truck,
Yeah.
try to make it disappear.
Yeah. That's the sequence the Mexican police apparently shared with the media. Could be a tactic, could be what they genuinely believe happened. But, like the source suggests, the real truth, that's for the court to decide.
The aftermath of this was huge, wasn't it? The public reaction.
Oh, massive outrage. Understandably. There were memorials, people leaving surfboards with messages painted on them.
Protest, too.
Yeah, rallies, protests, demanding justice, and also demanding that beaches be made safer. A really fundamental plea.
In this case, getting all this international attention, it kind of highlighted a painful contrast, didn't it?
It really did. The source points out that while this case got global headlines, sadly, violence and disappearances affecting Mexican citizens in Baja are common.
But those cases often don't get the same level of intensity in the investigation.
Often not, no. Less media focus, maybe fewer resources, slower path to justice, if any.
The statistics mentioned are pretty stark.
Yeah, between 2006 and 2023, something like 30,000 homicides recorded in Baja, California, and 20,000 missing persons cases. Huge numbers.
And a high rate of impunity.
The source cited an estimate that maybe 80% of criminals in the region don't end up getting convicted, which paints a really bleak picture of the justice system's challenges.
It makes you ask some difficult questions then.
Absolutely. Like, was the speed of this investigation influenced by the fact the victims were foreign tourists? Were authorities worried about the impact on tourism, which is so vital there?
And could this case, because it was so high profile, actually be a turning point?
That's the hope some might have, I guess. Could it maybe push the system to give more attention, more resources to all the other cases, the local ones that don't make international news?
It forces you to think about those systemic issues, but also just brings you back to the sheer personal tragedy.
Definitely. Callum dreaming of a family, Jake's medical career just taking off, Carter, newly engaged, coaching kids, just wiped out.
There's that quote in the source about Callum.
Yeah.
From his university athletic director.
Brad Adams, yeah. Said he was an excellent student and athlete. Above all, he was a great friend, lived an amazing life, impressed everyone. Anyone who knew him would undoubtedly want to be his friend forever.
Just a reminder of the people behind the headlines.
Exactly. Real lives, real potential, lost. And as far as the legal side goes, the source left off with the case pending, heading towards that first court hearing for the suspects.
Okay, so we followed the thread from the source material, from what started as this exciting surf trip, to the sudden silence, the awful discovery, the investigation, the suspects being identified, and the police theory of what might have happened.
Right. And the key takeaway is that the suspects are awaiting trial, and the full legal story is still unfolding.
But looking at this whole thing, it's more than just one terrible crime, isn't it? It really throws open the door on the complexities of a region that's dealing with some very serious, deep-seated crime problems.
Yeah, it raises tough questions about safety. Safety for visitors, sure, but maybe even more importantly, safety for the people who live there day in, day out. and about justice, who gets it, how quickly, and why.
How does a place like that balance the need for tourism, the image it projects, with tackling these really ingrained issues of violence and, well, impunity? It leaves you thinking, doesn't it, about what really makes somewhere safe, truly safe for everyone.
It does. A lot to reflect on there.
Well, that brings us to the end of this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for listening. Until next time.